Episode 5, The Need for Routine Future-Proofing. Welcome to Talking Family Business. My name is Leah Crowley, and in this 6-episode series, we're taking a look at succession plans, cycles, and future-proofing family businesses. Today, we've got a full house. HLB Mann Judd partner Stephen Preen, HLB Mann Judd Business Advisory Manager Tom Roberts, Western Earth Moving's Managing Director Graham Ragg, and General Manager Michael Ragg are all here on a mission to expose secrets around the need for constant future-proofing. That 5-year plan, perhaps you should be updating it every 3 years. Welcome to all of you.
Hey, Leah.
Hello, Leah.
Hello, Leah.
Firstly, Stephen and Tom, what exactly is future-proofing?
Well, future-proofing to me is make sure the business is financially stable and that it's got the ability to grow and look after its workforce and attend to all its clients' needs as you progress through the cycles. All of these things need obviously a lot of planning and taking into account the future succession of the plan, and from there comes a lot of various elements which build that up, and also they continually need revisiting and updating for everyone to understand where the journey is.
Tom, what do you tell your clients when they're like, how do I do a future-proof?
Well, I think it's for me, through the lens of family business, I think it's about looking at viability and sort of protecting your family, really. It's trying to make sure that you're protecting your income streams and your family wealth so that you can provide for today and future generations, I think. Graham
and Mike, what's your definition of future-proofing in relation to WEM?
Look, I think what the guys cover there has got a good sense to it. To me, it's also about we're making sure that we're future-proofing it for the people that work with us. Customers as well, but particularly for our staff. We're fortunate with great staff that really work to the right values, cooperate with our needs, focus on what's important. So, Mike and I see it as very important that we're strong enough business to look after their interests for the future as well.
Graham spoke about employees and all our team. Definitely agree. I think it's also looking at what are your customers' needs now or in the future. The way a customer conducts themselves historically does not predicate how they want to interact today or in a year or in 10 years' time. So it's always trying to anticipate how customers would like you to interact with them, whether it's a different style, different people, different varying levels of service you may provide to them. So we're always thinking about how do we best meet our customers' needs. And that's, for Graham and I, it's looking after our culture and our customers.
Yeah, it's important to be thinking ahead, and and the other way of the thing is how you value add to them, so that they can be a stronger business for us to interact with ongoing.
Stephen, is updating like a 5-year plan something that you should be doing internally as a business, or do you believe like getting the fresh eyes from outside the company helps?
Combination of both. I think the equity owners and the management have a role to play in looking at where the business is going ahead, and that needs a facilitation process to enable it to be kept on track and make sure you're accountable. At the end of the day, people can tend to get tied down or involved in other areas which might be less important. So you're trying to get back on track and have another eye which sort of just looks over the way you're progressing and the logic involved and so forth, and that you're not really going into a unrealistic scenario.
It kind of reminds me, Mike was saying in the last episode, that as a business owner, you could be really sort of focused in on the day-to-day business. It's hard to sort of put your head back into this future-proofing.
The bigger picture of what's really happening, and making sure you're addressing those bigger issues, because as we know, we all sometimes get tied down in things which maybe are not as important as you think they are.
Perspective. Tom?
Just I think to add to that point, I think the reality is that business owners will know their business better than anyone else. And really what our role is to sort of provoke their thought and sort of get them, take the blinkers off, if you like that analogy, and sort of look outside a bit more. I mean, the benefit of what we have is we have perspective. We see numerous family businesses in lots of different industries, and I think, us being able to bring that to the table and provoke thought of the business owners is sort of a pretty good combination.
When you talk with people and ideas might float across the table, and sometimes you think they may be not important to you, but they might be important to them. And then you sort of come back and discuss things in another month or so forth, and you find that idea is taken a different context with them and becomes quite important.
Yeah, right.
And people sort of think about things. It's quite often you find an idea might be dismissed, but it tends to resonate with other people, and you find that idea comes to the fore.
They've been having a ponder whilst driving about it that past month.
It's their idea. They've got ownership of it.
Actually,
I think sometimes the seed's planted a bit deep and that plant takes a little bit longer to grow.
But I see.
And my reflection on that has been on the longer journey with Steve is that quite often our discussions are reflections on what we said we were going to do 5 or 6 years ago, and where we hoped we'd be, what we hoped the family would grow into or the interactions would be. And it's good to look back on some of those and say, you know, we were pretty close to the mark on what the bigger picture vision on what we were trying to do. And, you know, getting the right advice to get that strategy correct to make it happen is another deal. But certainly for us, the longevity of relationship there with making sure that you've got some good reflection points with senior people is paramount.
I think the approach we usually take is we sort of quite often talk about the 5 phases that we sort of go through, and the first one is really about taking the time to diagnose what the problems are and sort of do a really broad brush analysis of the business, because I think, you know, like building a house, you want to have a very good foundation on which you build your strategy. And I think once you've sort of done that and identified where the problems are, the next phase is then that's when you really get into the strategy. But, you know, that's only one part of it. Once you've actually formulated your vision of where you want to be and sort of looked at where you are today and how to get there, I think the next part is, you know, you can have your plans in place, but that ability to actually work with the client over, you know, whatever the defined time period is, might be 5 years, 3 years, 10 years, you know, depends on the business. Things change and you need to keep that element of accountability is so important. Just having that forum to have honest, frank conversations with one another and hold each other accountable to what you said you do is really the most important part.
In terms of business sizes and future-proofing, Tom, should a smaller business revisit their future-proofing plans sooner than a larger business, or is it all kind of the same?
I don't think size necessarily matters so much. To be honest, I think, you know, different sized businesses will have different challenges, no doubt. Like, you know, if you take WEM's case, for example, they're a 60-year business. So they're at the stage where they're what I would almost call an emerging corporate. You know, they've grown to such a size where the whole challenge to working with these guys is really preserving and protecting their culture, which is what's made them so successful to date, but also systemising and adding more structure to things so that we can move it to the next level. You know, quite often when we work with family businesses, you'll always hear a very similar story about, oh, you know, I used to know everyone out in the field, or I used to know everyone driving the buses, or, you know, whatever the situation is. And I think, you know, to sustain for such a long period, obviously you've had a lot of success, and I think that the challenge at that point is, as I said, is how to move to that next level. But, you know, taking it back to smaller businesses, they'll have different challenges. I think they're typically a lot more worried about cash flow, where the next sale is coming from, these type of things. Quite often there's a lot of key person risk in small businesses. If something happens to the owner, then the business can, you know, have pretty detrimental effects on the business. So, you know, in terms of timeframes, I think every business, every size needs to always be, you know, looking over the shoulder and considering what's coming. But I think, you know, they're probably just looking at different challenges depending on where they're at.
If you are in a smaller business, Stephen, can you future-proof by yourselves, like as the business, or?
I think you really need that sounding board to help you, you know, just consider, you know, who are your customers? Are you relying on one large customer and those sort of things? Because that can really bring someone down if they suddenly turn on you for various reasons. So it's always good to have a sounding board. Yeah, it can be just a quarter of an hour check-up once a week or a couple of hours a month or something, you know, along those lines.
Yeah, right.
Leah, I'd liken it to some people can train at a gym by themselves. Others like having a personal trainer there.
Yeah.
motivate to keep, there's regularity, there's set times. They have someone who's assessing their skill level. They have someone pushing them, motivating them. It's the same thing with having an external advisor with your business. It's not, it's not like you need to be seeing them every day, but it's, you may have set an agreement on a strategy that you catch up and discuss every 3 months, and it means that the owners or the executives or the board or whatever is accountable to someone else who's saying, well, you agreed you're going to get this done by this date. Why isn't it? It's pretty hard to just say, we're too busy. Is that right, Graham?
Yeah, look, I think I agree with that sort of thought. The simpler way I put it is what these guys are pretty good doing is just holding up the mirror and saying, well, this is what you said you're going to do. Have you done it?
It's homework.
Yeah, I don't like homework. It's work every day. But it's really the reflection point of someone outside your day-to-day circle who's getting you to have a good look in the mirror and think, are you behaving the way you said you would, that you want to? And being the independent, strong voice to help you get to that point. That's important that way. That's the future proofing. Sure, it's how you run your business day to day, but that is what keeps you, I think, online to continue to grow or prosper or be as strong as you should be. Make sure you've got strong financial reserves. Make sure you get past the point of worrying about, how do I pay the bills tomorrow? All those sorts of things of getting strength. And small businesses with good advice can do it. They can do it. But from my point of view, for smaller businesses, we talk to and advise. We say, make sure you get independent help. You need to get it. These guys they don't know much about moving dirt, but they know a whole lot more about business things than we could ever imagine. And, we use each other's strengths. Very important.
Matter of going aligned along the journey. That the business owner is aligned with somebody or even their partner or so forth, that they've got the common goals of what they're trying to achieve.
I think that's an interesting point you've just made there, because I think quite often where a lot of strategy in that falls over is businesses don't have a clear vision. So I think, actually going through that process of really understanding and creating transparency around where you want to be in future, I think is actually really, really important part of that, because then you can communicate it and get buy-in. And
well, people have different objectives. You see people who you read in the press who have these long-term ideas, and then you see in 12 months' time they've gone under, and they could have gone under for various reasons. But it's normally because they got greedy or they went off on a different tack, or there wasn't really a process there.
Do you find it frustrating when you're working with a business and you're helping them with their future proofing, and then when you do check up on them and they haven't done what they were going to do, and you're like, please do it because it's for you guys? Is there a level of frustration? How do you get around that? How do you talk them into it?
Yeah, that does happen, and it's sometimes hard to get them back on track. But if they want to go down that journey, there's not much you can do about it at the end of the day. Just try and support them and say, well, it's about a point. You do find people listen, and they mightn't pick it up now, but they'll pick it up later at some point.
Like you said, that seed.
From my point of view, as a long-term person in one industry, I find that, and I'm grateful about this, a lot of smaller businesses and people might talk to me for some advice, and you can pretty quickly work out whether they actually want to talk around to get advice or whether they just want to blurt it out and then take no notice.
Oh, so it's almost like they're looking for validation rather than advice.
Well, it's like they've come to visit the Pope. They're just going to confess and go.
Yeah, right.
So, and hope that'll solve everything. So, I've been lucky enough to work with some really great guys who wanted a hand and give them a hand. And just, my advice is more about people behaviour and how to work with people. I advise them to talk to people such as Man Judd. And a lot of people want to listen. Some just want to blurt it out. And you can quickly work that out and build their success around people if they can do that.
I think to your point earlier, Graham, a big part of it is playing the role of, facilitating the strategy and things. A big part of it is, as you said, holding the mirror up. And I think a big part of that is you need to sort of build that relationship to such a point where you can be honest and say, look, if you're serious about being what you say you want to be, then you're not acting in that way. So having that honesty and being able to have those conversations.
In a business as big as WEM, how many within the business Like, you don't need to get into details if you don't want to, but like just numbers wise, how many employees, including you guys, are kind of helping structure the future proofing?
Well, that's an interesting thing, because part of our discussions today we're having is to making sure that our base gets wider. We've got 3 key people driving that for now.
Mm-hmm.
And as our business grows, with the vision we've got, the strategy that these guys are helping us invoke, basically means that we've got to make sure the base of our pyramid's wider and stronger. And so we'll be getting more people involved in that process.
That goes back to the point about the vision. I think once you actually have that vision and that, that's all documented and you can actually put that message out there and it's well understood, what you see is some people really buy into that and run at it. And I think, and others will shy away. That's also, don't hide away from that. I think some people get off the train. That's a reality of it as well. But I think by actually going through the process and having that vision that you can throw out there to people, you can start to broaden the base, as Graham said.
And the other thing behind that for me personally is that, Mike's taking over more and more of the running of our business day by day, construction activities, etc. And I'm well aware that it's a larger, more intricate business to run than 20 years ago and so many years ago. And, I want to make sure that the family and Michael have a greater degree of support than I had when I was in that position. It's necessary now for the size and structure we've got. So part of what we're going through is to make sure that the right people have the opportunity to step forward, take more responsibility, grab it, run with it, build a stronger framework for our whole business and the families included in that business.
So we have the current structure of our executive team, so Graham, myself and Peter Kay. And through our succession planning between Graham and myself, there needs to be succession of those that are leaders below myself, because there will be a period of time where the current structure doesn't exist, and the business will plans it to continue to grow. Well, it's not feasible for myself to be the only person in that type of position, or the current structure with only one person. There's just
it's not going to work.
It's not going to work. We won't hit our goals. We won't be keeping our customers satisfied. We'll struggle to keep culture where it is, and we won't be as successful as we have been. And that's a big risk to the business. So it's taken a lot of thinking between us all to get to the position where we are now, and setting a target and a vision, but then planning for the succession of people within the business, not just between Graham and myself.
Yeah, exactly. Look, I go back a few years when, Mike was, I don't know how many years ago, 5-6 years ago, something more like that, taking a stronger role and things. And I thought to myself, how do I get this people to understand it's not my son? I just haven't tapped him on the head that he's in charge. What do I do? So all I could think, I adopted a thing of saying every time I said I said Mike and I.
Yeah, right.
So everything I thought of or I was going to do, Mike and I have thought this, Mike and I thought, it went on and on. And eventually one of the senior guys in the paddock said, you know what, we get the message now, we can drop that. We sort of understand Mike's in charge. So I think it worked, but there's lots of primitive ways of going about messaging.
But again, it plays in that thing of succession is an event. They can't, it's not just, today it's this, next day it's that. It's a journey. Small things like that do make a big difference in aiding that succession correctly with, I don't know, Graham spoke, with people internally within the business, but also with customers as well, spoke that same way, to help people understand where our succession was.
That's right.
Which has worked well.
And over the last, going back quite a few years, you've developed the employee skills down the line. You've been conscious of, what's going on out there and things have changed, and you need more skills today in those areas.
Correct.
Than you ever needed.
Yep. I think we've challenged ourselves to really elevate the calibre and skill set of the people that work in the business. And that applies to everyone in the business, not just a select few that are leaders, whether that's leadership training or technical training or anything.
Yeah. If I think back to my dad's time and Arthur Baxter's time, if I was trying to explain to them, we've got people going to the National Institute of Drama Association to learn skills now. So they go to NIDA. All I could do is turn around and just walk out and go to the pub, I suppose. That's right. Not really understand how to deal with it. But it's such it's been such a change and such growth for our people. Self-rewarding, adds value for us all the time. It's been great fun.
Yeah. A formal training process on the art of negotiation skills.
Yeah.
Was one of the main courses that we sent numerous people through, and you basically get to learn to negotiate against an actor, which sounds silly but is incredibly difficult and challenging, and you learn a lot out of it. And that's just one little way that we've tried to help make a difference in elevating people as management within the business.
So I think one of the key points there is, as part of succession, there's always two things. There's one, you want to have the capability, which is sort of what we're talking about, and then two, you need to have perceived credibility. And that's why I think, going back to what sort of Graham was saying earlier about, Mike and I, those things are just so crucial, because what you're actually doing is you're creating perceived credibility amongst your staff, amongst your clients and suppliers, and that makes the succession a lot easier.
A final question for everyone, I guess. As a business leader, could you imagine running a business without future-proofing?
No.
Oh, thanks, Leah. You got any tricky questions? No. Look, it's part of the game. You've got to be learning from history all the time, reflecting on history. What have you learned? What's good? What's bad? What was fun? What was enjoyable? How do you get a laugh out of it? But if you're not looking further forward and planning and future-proofing and making sure there's a safety net or whatever it's got to be, you're just wasting your time.
It's not, it's too important.
Absolutely wasting your time.
You've got to have the right people in place. And in our business, we're always looking at our progression and people coming through the right skills, and the skills change. The skills are more varied. 20 years ago, Graham and I could do everything. Well, in our own businesses, those times are gone. Yep. Well and truly gone.
Yep. Generalists now compared to a quarter of a century ago, very, very different. One thing that hasn't changed, I always just like to get this comment in if I can, for our business. When we employ people, we have a good chat to them about all sorts of things and find out what sort of people they really are and see if we can do that sort of stuff. But then, particularly if they're in anything associated with wider management, we'll say to them, look, it's important when you work with us, you understand there's rules to follow, there's specifications to read, contracts to follow, plans to work to, but we have one expectation. We just want you to work as if your mum's watching.
That's not bad.
And if people don't get that, out the door.
Yeah.
So there's still always, for us, there's still some basics in business and how people behave. And, if we're getting to the end of this, our relationship with Man Judd is really based on the way they've always behaved and respected our interests and protected them and helped us step up taller and improve all the way through. So thanks to those guys for leading the journey with us. Thanks, Steve.
Yeah. Pleasure, Graham, but it's been wonderful to see how WIM grows through the years, where it's come from, where it is today. It's a credit to both of you, that's for sure.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see where it's going. I'm going to get to look for a long time yet.
Yeah, it's got a long way to go.
Yeah.
Only starting. Boys.
You're putting the pads on now.
I'm going to strap the pads on, go and face that fast bowling this afternoon. I'm very excited.
Thank you guys so much for joining me.
Thanks, Leah.
For further information, please visit our website hlb.com.au.